Welcome. Today we're sitting down to walk through a real case study, a story about a medical practice sale that nearly fell apart, not once, but twice, and what it took to bring it back from the brink. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kathy. This is a real deal I'm really proud of. Not because it was easy, but precisely because it wasn't.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. What kind of practice was this, and how did the listing come about?
This was a well established primary care practice, a physician who had built something really solid over many years and was ready to transition. The practice had strong patient volume, a large senior patient base, and was delivering value based care at a very high level, and which, as anyone in healthcare knows, is a really significant differentiator. That combination of clinical quality and financial performance made this an attractive opportunity. Our job was to find the right buyer who would honor what had been built to get our client the best possible outcome.
So, you've mentioned before that how you structure the buyer process matters enormously. Walk us through how you approached that here.
Right, this is something that separates a strategic advisor from a general business broker who just lists the practice and waits. We had significant interest, which is typical for a quality primary care practice. We did preliminary virtual meetings with multiple qualified buyers. We moved five of them through the process simultaneously, and we did that very deliberately
Why five? Why not just focus on the best one?
because we wanted to create competition, which creates urgency. When a buyer knows there's other serious uh, potential suitors evaluating the same opportunity, it changes their behavior. They move faster, they're more decisive, and frankly, they put a stronger offer on the table initially. Three buyers verbally indicated that they were going to present offers, two actually followed through. And here's the interesting part both offers were within 5% of each other.
That's remarkably close. And you chose the lower offer?
We did, and that might surprise some people because our job isn't just to maximize the number, it's to find the best fit for our client. The lower offer came in from a buyer whose vision for the practice, commitment to the existing staff and patients, and overall profile was simply a better match. Our client agreed. That's sell side advisory done right.
So you had your buyer selected. Then what happened?
The buyers submitted what I describe as a light letter of intent. Lots of open ended language, too many critical issues to be decided later in the definitive purchase agreement. In our experience, when you defer too much to the definitive purchase agreement, you're setting the deal up for problems down the road.
How did you handle that?
We went back to the seller, our client, and we worked through a much more specific counterproposal. We wanted the LOI to be detailed. It should reflect the real alignment between both parties on key terms. And if you can't agree on major points at the LOI stage, the definitive purchase agreement is going to be a battleground.
That sounds like a tense moment.
It was the start of tension, yes, but this is exactly the kind of thing an experienced broker anticipates and navigates, and some might even look forward to it. And together, we put together a counteroffer, kept the communication professional and focused, and got the negotiation moving forward.
Okay, so the LOI gets revised. You think you're moving toward agreement. What happened next?
This is where things got complicated. During the early buyer seller meetings, working capital had never come up. It wasn't part of the initial conversations. And then a much more detailed counter offer came in from the buyer's attorney. A working capital provision appeared, and our client, our seller, was blindsided by it.
Blindsided how? What was the concern?
Working capital in a practice acquisition relates to the cash and near cash assets that are left behind in a business post sale to support the ongoing operations, things like accounts receivable and cash on hand. The buyer wanted provisions that protected their cash flow after they took over. Our seller heard this and felt like the goalpost had just been moved. They were really ready to walk away.
That must have been an incredibly difficult moment.
It was, And this is why exactly why it's important to have an experienced intermediary in the room. Because in that moment, emotions are running high. The seller has worked their entire career building this practice. They feel like the buyer is trying to take something extra at the last minute. And so the buyer, on the other hand, has cash flow concerns that are also legitimate. Both perspectives are understandable. But if the two parties aren't talking directly to each other in that emotional state, the deal is over.
So, what did you do?
I encouraged our client to resist the urge to react immediately, not unlike when a parent resists a child to take a time out. And so I asked them to agree to have another virtual meeting just to let both parties express themselves and their point of view, not to negotiate, just to communicate. And we seemed to resolve it at that meeting. The LOI was again revised, and we thought there was a mutual understanding.
But then it nearly fell apart again.
Yes, and this is the part that really underscores the complexity of these transactions. Even after that meeting, it became clear that our client hadn't fully absorbed what the buyer was actually asking for. There's a lot of legal and financial language in these documents, and sellers are physicians. They're brilliant at what they do, but this isn't their world.
So, what happened specifically?
We had a meeting with our client and their attorney, and the seller was again on the verge of pulling out. And I have to be honest, in that moment, I took a step back and I put things in perspective. I reminded our client of something important, the competitive pressure strategy that we had employed early on that had resulted in our client receiving an offer above the most probable selling price that we had stated in the formal valuation we performed before our engagement. They had a very good situation in front of them.
So, the offers were better than what you had originally projected.
Exactly. Both buyers had competed themselves above our valuation range. So I asked our client to take a pause, not to make any decision in that moment, just to process the information. Meanwhile, we went back to the buyer and informed them we were working through some details on our side. We kept the lines of communication open without revealing the level of internal difficulty we were dealing with.
And what happened after the pause?
A few days later, we met with our client again, and the difference was remarkable. They had processed everything we had discussed. They came in calm, clear headed, and ready to problem solve. In fact, and this is the part I love, our client brought the solution to the table themselves. They proposed a proposal that would address the buyer's working capital concerns, but also protect their own interests at the same time.
The seller solved it.
The seller solved it. And because we gave them the space to do so, I'm really happy to report this deal is now back on track and moving into escrow.
That's a fantastic outcome. And it's a story that a lot of sellers need to hear, especially when you consider the broader picture. So, what does the data say about deals falling apart in this industry?
The industry average is sobering. More than 50% of businesses that go under contract never make it to closing. They follow out for various reasons, like the ones we experienced in this deal: financing issues, due diligence friction, emotional breakdowns in communication. The industry is full of deals that should have closed but didn't.
And at Strategic Medical Brokers,
Our success rate once a listing goes under contract is 80%. And that's not by accident. It's because we stay in the deal. We don't just introduce the buyer to the seller and step aside. We manage the process, we manage the expectations, and yes, we manage the emotions.
so if you had to distill this story down for a physician who's considering selling their medical practice, what are the lessons?
There are four things I take away from this deal, and honestly, they apply to every deal we do. First, educate both sides early. Working capital, deal structure, what the LOI means. These are concepts that need to be explained in plain language before a crisis moment arises. Surprises during negotiations are never good. Second, keep the communication flowing. The moment the information stops moving between the parties, fear fills the vacuum. We kept the buyer confident that we were working towards a resolution. That kept the buyer patient in this situation. Third, the business intermediary has to be the shield. They are the buffer between the parties. Our client is emotionally invested in this deal, as they should be. They've built something extraordinary, and our job is to absorb the friction, to translate the tension, and present solutions instead of ultimatums. And fourth, keep the parties focused on the goal. In this case, the goal was a successful transfer of a thriving practice at a price that was above what we had projected. When you bring people back to the shared goal, the path forward usually becomes clear.
That's incredibly valuable. And this is exactly why sellers who try to navigate this alone or with an inexperienced broker are at such a disadvantage.
Exactly right. The deal didn't just almost fall apart because of bad faith on either side. It nearly fell apart because of complexity, misunderstanding, and emotion, all of which are completely normal in a transaction of this magnitude. The difference is having someone in the room who's seen it before and knows how to navigate it.
So for any physician watching this who is considering selling their practice, what would you want them to know about working with strategic medical brokers?
That we're with you every step of the way, not just at the beginning, not at the closing table, throughout. The valuation, the positioning, the buyer qualifications, the negotiations, and the hard conversations. We've been through these situations before. We know where the landmines are, and our job, our commitment, is to get you to the finish line with the outcome you deserve.
Thank you. This has been such an important conversation, and I know it's going to resonate with a lot of practice owners out there. If you'd like to learn more about what strategic medical brokers can do for you, visit us at strategicmedicalbrokers.com or call us directly. The consultation is confidential and there's no obligation. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Sean.